Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant.
My name is Niels Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. The Consortium agreement is one of the first things you need to deal with when you receive the best email in the world from the EU Commission announcing that your proposal has been granted funding. Here in the second episode in the implementation series, The Grant zooms in on what on earth the Consortium agreement actually is and how to approach the development of it. I have again aligned myself with the great capacity independent consultant Georg Melzer-Venturi, who has done consortium agreements a lot of times. He takes us through the important steps in the process and shares tips, tricks, do's and don'ts from his many years of experience. This episode contains an endless amount of crucial tips and heads-ups for both professionals who will ever be coordinating a project and professionals that have done it already. Please enjoy. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today we will continue the implementation series, the second episode, and we're going to have a look at the consortium agreement, the ubiquitous consortium agreement that you always have to do when you do a collaboration project, EU funded. So without further ado, George, welcome.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me again.
Sure.
I almost feel at home here now. Yep.
It's also quicker pre-recording. It's getting much more efficient.
Yeah.
We also you were my expert on the contract negotiations, which was a great episode. And the natural continuation would be, of course, to have you sharing on how it is with this consortium agreement. So without, it's just. You're regular here, but for people who have not, for first timers, just shorter introduction to you.
Yeah, my name's Georg Melzer-Venturi. I run a small consulting company called Utima Research Services. Over the last 25 years, I've been helping organizations in various contexts, getting them onto the EU funding train, so to speak. And I have a biotech background, so I'm very technology focused in the projects that I work with. But basically, it's the skill set and the questions that you need to be asking yourself are always the same. So that's what I do.
Thanks. Consortium agreement, short fly-in.
Well, the thing is, you have two things that are happening when you're collaborating across EU projects. One thing is the grant agreement, which tells you what you need to do, right? That's the activities that you have to perform, the results that you have to at least try to achieve, the milestones that you have on that way. But that's all the technical part. Then beside that, there's obviously the, how are we going to do this? How are we going to work together? How are we going to coordinate? How do we make decisions? And all of that, the European Commission doesn't really want to impose on you how to do it. It's basically like, well, do it. You need to have some sort of an agreement of how you're going to make decisions. And I mean, I remember in FP6, FP7, that was terrible because there was not a lot of guidance, but then sometime during, I think it was late FP7 and then early H 2020, the DESCA model agreement started coming into play, and that's been really, really helpful. As far as I know, the DESCA was an EU coordination action that, that was aimed at providing a standardized consortium agreement, and it gets updated every once in a while. And it's a really, really nice basis. And obviously everybody who's not new knows it. The legal departments know it. So I've never had a project that didn't use the DESCA model, actually.
All right. I will link to it in the episode notes here in the episode on the episode page. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, what's it about? Well, there's a lot of money on the table. There's a lot of things that are only implied in the grant agreement. There's general, who has how many person months in what work package, but there's not a lot of information on how do we deal with problems, right? And on that aspect, that's basically the main thing where the consortium agreement comes into play. So actually, one way of saying it is, the consortium agreement is like the prenup of research projects. If everything's going great, you'll never have to touch it or look at it again. But when things come up, it's good to have as much as possible decided in the consortium agreement. All right. So, I mean, do you want to go through the sections, Niels, or
let's yeah. That's next up. Let's just run through so what does it look like? What sections do we have in there?
Well, there's usually around 12 main sections and a couple attachments. Obviously, definitions, right? What's the project? What's the team? A lot of times, for example, in the medical projects where I'm working, we define the term clinical trial or have definitions for what we define as personal data, so as to make it a little bit less variable in interpretation. Also, in the clinical trial, there's such a thing as a sponsor. That's one of the organizations that is sort of responsible for the specific trial, stuff like that. Then obviously there's a part on when it enters into force and the duration of the consortium agreement. At the end of the project is usually the end, or when you leave the project. And then there's obviously always stuff that carries on after the project as well. So there's certain rights and obligations that maintain even after the project's finished already. Mm-hmm. Then there's a section on the responsibilities of the various parties, which is very general, basically saying everybody has to perform to the best of their abilities, not being in contempt of the idea of the project goals, stuff like that. So that's all relatively. A lot of it in this DESCA template is predefined and just stuff that has worked really well.
Yeah. So you will have this semi-legal language, mm-hmm. Like formal language. Yeah. So is there anything else in sections predefined?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that of course are relatively important. I think one of the things is making definitions on how what's a meeting. And with a meeting, it's not like just a telco where a couple people show up, but like you have regular meetings usually in the projects, like whatever the steering committee meeting or whatever, that's on a monthly basis, or a general assembly that's every 12 months, or other meetings that you regularly have. And one thing that's almost always in the consortium agreement is how long in advance do the dates have to be set? How long in advance does the agenda have to be set? Mm-hmm. What happens to agenda points that get added, on short term or during the meeting? Because, it's the thing is, especially, for example, the General Assembly, which is, the yearly the yearly meeting of the project, which at least one representative of every beneficiary should be present in. That's the easiest place to get decisions made, right? And then usually you have minimum requirements. At least 2/3 of the people have to be there, and any vote has to be passed with at least a 2/3 majority or something like that. So unanimous is always tricky because that's we see that with the European Parliament how tricky it can be to get 100% of the vote when 99.9 are in agreement. But obviously, if I know that I can't attend and there's nothing on the agenda that's relevant for me, it's easier for me to say, look, I'll just agree to everything that you say because for whatever reason, I really can't make it. I can't even be virtually present, blah, blah. But then what if somebody introduces a topic that I'm not aware of and that gets voted while I'm not part of the process?
George's okay with it. Yeah, he said he's okay with it.
And so that would be the classic one where you say that any agenda item that has not been added at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting will be open for needs to be confirmed by members not present in the General Assembly.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Which is normal because you could maybe consider these kind of assemblies a little bit like general assemblies in organizations, right? That you have certain formalities on when changes to the agenda should be handed in or suggestions to changes in the rules and regulations or the foundation documents of the organization, whatever. You have this, so everybody has a chance to deal with it, and anything that comes after that's not. You can open a discussion maybe in the assembly, but then it's something that to be considered for next year's formalities if it needs to be included. So,
yeah, I mean that's actually a bit tricky because sometimes things are time critical, but at least you can say, look, everybody here agrees on this. George wasn't here, or in that time, Utima Research Services wasn't present, so it says tentatively approved, pending confirmation by Utima. That's how we do it, and then if. Because that way you can get a decision in, and then if there's a look, it doesn't matter, I'm fine with that, then it works, and then you immediately have a decision, and it's not put off by another 12 months, which also you don't want, right?
And then I guess it's important to flag the importance of, because that's always something that it's one of the first things that especially companies address when you approach them to be partners in a project. What about the copyrights?
Yeah.
The patents. So this is one of the classics where you say, look, in principle, everybody shares copyrights, but in reality, we know it's not like this. But you will deal with that in the consortium agreement, how the cake is going to be sliced. So this is part of the rough ones sections often, because especially if you are a life science and health expert, Georg, so you know exactly how these things they are and where you have been in these situations. So it's something that's where the hard ball game starts normally.
Yeah, that's an. I was going to go into that a little bit later because it's one of the but
just to mention that.
But it's good. No, it is good because it is one of the probably trickiest one because there's a triangle of ideas, right? On the one side, only the joint effort is making something possible, right? Mm-hmm. On the one hand, there's if there's a for-profit company in there somewhere that has preliminary data or an existing patent or is working towards a patent, then they have a lot of information, and especially the research community is just interested in gaining knowledge. I mean, I'm polarizing here a bit, but or simplifying this a little bit. But if we keep it at that scale, then obviously the company is always afraid that the researchers are just going to go out and publish something before it's patented, and the researchers are like, but I want to publish this as quickly as I can before somebody else does, because this will get me a publication in Nature, and that's so many impact points, blah blah, right? And so that's always a bit of an issue, and that's So I guess one of the most interesting parts, almost in setting up the consortium agreement, is this: how is this done, right? What do you do? And it can be
But let's take that in the process part.
Yeah,
because that's one of the interesting parts. I just wanted to flag that this is actually one of the really important elements in the parts of the agreement because it's something that can be vital if you have fights breaking out, because this is exactly what most fights break out or can break out about, because this is what they really care about. So that's where, especially also if you have direct competitors.
Yes, but that's especially bad. Yeah, that's especially bad. But the problem is, as soon as the golden goose is here, then it's too late to start talking about how you're gonna divide up the eggs. You need to have a basic plan in place before there's a lot of potential earnings on the table, and that's, I think.
All right. Let's stop walking around the process. Well, let's take that from the top. So, process of developing the consortium agreement. So, let's take it from your point of view as where you've been coordinating the implementation of a project. So, how do you start this? I put proposal in the first place from the idea that that's your base document, so to say, of your considerations and what is supposed to be. But take us through how you start this process to develop the agreement.
Yes, I mean, the one thing is, as soon as you get the evaluation summary report that you have been invited to contract negotiations, that is the point when you collect all the contact information of the respective legal teams. Don't wait. The consortium agreement is probably the longest thing to get done. And in the last projects where I've done, we've always had it done in time. I hear stories of projects that had consortium agreements up and running 18 months into the project, or not done, and that's a tricky one. I mean, yeah, there is a workaround though. However, a tricky one, because the European Commission doesn't want to see the consortium agreement. It doesn't give any indications on what it is. So you can have a version 1 of your consortium agreement that has one paragraph saying, this consortium agreement is that the entire consortium agrees to having a version 2, which is based on the DESCA model, done at the latest by month 12.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a consortium agreement. It's useless, yeah, but you fulfilled the obligation towards the Commission, and it gives you a little bit extra time to it. But to be honest, I think that's
well played.
That's a last resort. And it shouldn't, if you start like that, then you're not going to be done with it in month 36. So,
no.
But it is something when you say, look, we want to have it formally correct, because when you sign the grant agreement, you're also clicking a box that says, yes, we have a consortium agreement that's signed by everybody. And so that would be, slightly, it's a workaround.
About my work, we are in an Erasmus Plus project. It's very well coordinated by a Hamburg organization, Hamburg-based organization, and they just received the partner agreement, just signed the partner agreement that they call it, and that's 2 pages. 2 pages. Erasmus Plus project, 2 pages partner agreement, but then they refer in the first clause to the consortium agreement, to budget, to whatever reference documents, and then you have very short paragraphs of each clause. So it sounds a little bit, but maybe it's just like this in Erasmus Plus project. I don't know, because I've never been in one. But no, I'm sorry for the digression. Back on track. So you tick a box when you sign the grant agreement saying we have a consortium agreement. So, yeah.
So you should have something.
Yeah.
Because you don't tick a box that you've signed the DESCA consortium agreement, just that you've signed it. consortium agreement. But the thing is, it's like a prenup. It makes life a lot easier when things go wrong. So you really want to have it, right?
Yeah.
And so what the DESCA usually has in a lot of sections is, choose version 1 or choose version 2. So they'll have, these are 2 possible ways of dealing with something. For example, if you're talking about IPR, they could have, well, if this is, a project that's exclusively done by research organizations, then you can just say we share everything and we publish everything and make everything open, blah, blah, blah. If it's a more industrial project, then, there's, it's patent first, publish second. Everything has to go through some kind of steering or audit board before it can be made public. So there's a lot of times the DESCA gives you various alternatives, and then you choose one of them, obviously, and delete the others. The thing is, most organizations know the DESCA agreement. All right, so that's always a good starting point. So that makes it a lot easier because then they know what numbers they have, what paragraphs they have to look into, where they have special needs. Sometimes there's organizations that say, no, I have to have this clause in there. So when you're approaching it, basically what we usually do is together with the legal department of the coordinating entity. We go through it and we make a first draft and a couple suggestions. Sometimes even saying, with these 2 basic alternatives, we don't really care. Is there anybody who has we'd prefer this one because it's more simple. But if anybody requests the other one, and then then you send it out the first time and get feedback, and it's amazing. Ask 3 lawyers, you get 4 opinions. And that's exactly what you get, right? And so, one will say no.
They're so afraid, especially private organizations, like private companies, for profit, where it's a not make or break, but it's important for them to be there, right? In relation to the business they have. So they are really attentive to detail.
Yeah, and they throw stuff in that's just like, you gotta be joking, yeah. But
that's just that's their world, right? It's probably they from there and know all kinds of horror stories of stolen IPR patents that got lost because of sloppiness or whatever, ill-willed partner, stuff like this. Now, it's just getting a little bit practical, so the text and so on. Do you just, if you would do it yourself? My best guess is you would look at an old consortium agreement, scrap the specificities for that project, the old project, and then take the standards and then work the text through with the new project that you're working with.
I never do that. No, I never do that because the problem is that by the time it's done, it's so specific to the group. It's better to take the blank template or the full template,
start from scratch,
delete it, and then maybe look into this is something that I like to do. For example, there's
structure.
There's a couple couple paragraphs that I like to put in. I mean, for example, one thing that I really think is important in the consortium agreement, because of the problem that you have in a new project, you're all equals. There's no. It's not like a normal contract, where there's a detailed description of what's going on. So it rarely happens, but when somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, it's really difficult to do something against it. And you basically, you on the one hand, you have this atomic bomb where you can say, look, we're holding you in contempt of the project, and I forgot what the term is. There's a term for it, where you say, look, we're gonna, that also involves reporting it to the commission and really saying, this is impossible, and there's no pre-form of regulation. So what I like to do is to say, basically, if there's a problem and 2/3 of the consortium or 3/4 of the consortium agree that it's necessary, that what you're doing is not up to the tasks as described and as expected, and there's no good justification that you've been able to give why it's not achieved. I mean, some things are unachievable. We all know that. But if there's not even the effort properly interpreted, then up to 50% of your planned budget can be revoked and goes back to the consortium so that other people can do it.
Okay.
And every time, everybody protests in the first round. And then I have to call every legal rep one by one and say, look, this means that your organization blatantly disregarded its commitment to the project. 2/3, in a consortium with 20 people, 15 organizations think it's that terrible that it justifies taking away money. And are you going to be that person? Is your organization going to be that person who's, not going to do it so that 2/3 of the consortium is so upset that they're going to say, we have to do something, we have to take it? And they're like, of course we're not, yeah? And they're like, well, see, then you're not going to be the problem.
Yes, this is regulation, right? But it's not different from if you would have private companies doing collaboration agreement together on developing something. They would also have rough clauses when it comes to breaking the deal.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of how people perceive the general perception of an EU funded, a publicly funded project. It's like, it's a little bit more loose, No, it's not.
There's a discrepancy between what the researcher sees and what the legal department sees, because usually the researchers say, so if Frank isn't doing his job, then I get his money and I can do his job. Awesome, because I'm going to be doing great work. And the legal department just says, oh my God, there's a risk. We might lose half our money, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very, very clear-cut context when this is applicable. When there's a repeat, despite warning, despite offers for help, despite trying to do everything you can to get the results, that partner is not delivering. Then at some point in time you have to say, okay, look, this is not going to work like this. Yeah.
So, dear listeners, red flag, important red flag that George just planted in front of you when you do the consortium agreement, that when you reach to the tough parts, prepare yourself that you will need to do bilateral talking and making them realize conversations, so to say, that what it is they haven't.
Maybe the order that I like to do. So first, you make a first version that you send out to everybody, and everybody has written comments. Then you look through the main ones and you call them one by one, and you go through the concerns which you think are going to be tricky to find a consensus and try to prepare it. And then you have one call where everybody's present.
Yeah.
And you go through an online version of the document and you change it during this
on the spot
1 or 2 hour call. And everybody has to agree, and it's really interesting because when you have 10 lawyers on a call, and everybody has their little things that they want, and sometimes they say, look, you really want that? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you want that wording. We'll have that wording. Does everybody agree? Yeah, and then when you give in on a lot of the little ones. And then the big ones come, and then 2/3 of the team's ready to look. And it's you again with some little nitty gritty problem. Please stop, yeah. And everyone's like, look, we have 2 hours left. We have 10 pages left, or we're in half an hour left. We got 10 pages to go. Please, can we just agree on this? It's obvious that this, yes, we're gonna have to find
psychology.
We have to find a way to get this done together, and that really helps. And that call takes forever to organize, because getting a 2 hour block with 10 legal departments or 15 legal departments, that's something you have to plan 6 weeks in ahead.
That's like writing an EU proposal.
Yeah, it
No,
is.
but yeah. Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, so listeners out there, again, red flag here. You can actually, it'd be a strategy to make, like everybody there, long meeting, go for every single little thing that needs to be approved on, and which will relativize the what do you say, the resistance, or the you break down the will of the lawyers. In the end, you break down the resistance in them to agreeing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like every time you have to have, like this combination of everybody's, at the end of the day, everyone's in the same boat, yeah, because everybody has the same problems and the same fears and the same expectations. At the other end, you can't just enforce your will onto 15, 20 other projects just because you want it, yeah. And and if a lawyer is an insurance against future troubles, that's why you have them, right? I mean, why do you make a deal? Yeah? If it was obvious, like, hey, let's do this together, I'll give you X amount of money and you give me this. If we were 100% sure that this is going to happen, then we wouldn't need a lawyer. Then we would just say go, all right?
Yeah.
But then you say, well, what if this happens? What if this? And there needs to be a reasonable amount of trust and certainty. So the trust comes from the joint project collaboration on the scientific side, and the certainty comes from the legal side. But the legal side can't try to hijack the trust on the implementation side.
Yeah. So you have that, everybody agrees, and then that's it. Yeah. So you when everybody has agreed, no?
That's all it takes. Simple as that. Getting 15 lawyers to agree.
Yeah.
And but one thing,
is there anything else you want to add to that? Because I'm trying to get the idea of the process here, right? So you have that meeting. Is rough?
No, because it can be terrible, because sometimes you don't have you have the lawyer on the call who's administering it, but not the one who can make the call. So if you constantly have to say, I got to ask my boss, if the second time you hear that in the call, it's like, look, call him up, tell him in 20 minutes, you're going to call him with 3 questions, and he needs to answer those as quickly as possible, because we need to get going. And because if there's 15 people on the call, all of them are capable of making decisions for their organization, and you aren't, then you're the wrong person on the call, and you shouldn't be on this call. But fix it, and you have to fix it during the call. People
out there, but keep coming red flags here. This is a very important podcast episode. Look, this is your red flag in relation to preparing this meeting, who's going to be there when you will sit and do that bloody coordination of getting those lawyers onto the same meeting at the same time. Make sure when you do that it is a person with decision mandate. So you have got to be explicit about that, and you'll say there will be no meeting. It's probably a good barrier, bottleneck for them. So there will be no meeting if not all partner delivers one person with a decision mandate, because we need to settle and agree on this meeting. Because what George is saying here is that what he has been doing earlier, he's been doing these meetings, and then comes the aftermath.
I mean, sometimes it's enough, if you have a good administrator who's in the foreground, and he has a person with decision-making power on call in the background, that's also fine. Because I can understand that you don't have the head of legal for 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. Yes, right? But if that head of legal knows that, from 11 to 11:15 and 12 to 12:15, he or she has to be available to take a call from the administrator, answer 3 questions, make a decision, then that's also okay. Yeah. But at the end of the call, it has to be done.
Then you can maybe even formalize that in the agenda of the meeting, saying, look, here we will, at this part of when we have agreed around the table, we will have a 30-minute breakout for everybody who needs to connect with their people with decision mandates home, and they will connect them in, and we will take a session, 30-minute session, where they will come into the call online, whatever, and whatever, make a structure around that, so it's not going to be too chaotic. Have you ever done something like this?
Well, to a certain degree, we do it because we say usually, we go through it, just as the numbering goes. But if there's something that causes a lot of friction, we say, okay, we're going to have 2 or 3 options here. We'll move this to the end, and then to get through everything once, and then just have 1 or 2 open issues, and then we say, well, maybe you can get send out an email to whoever's on it. But it's probably a good idea to say and make sure that in the last half hour, whoever can make decisions is available, possibly even to join the call, so that we can get a quick revision. That's not a bad idea, actually. It's a really good idea.
All right. Because what you're going to tell us now is, how is it if you don't do that? Because I can hear that you have tried that. So after this meeting, then goes into a phase where there's a back and forth with the ones who didn't have decision mandate.
Yeah, I mean, since we've started doing the meetings, we've always managed to solve everything in the meetings. But previously, it was basically like a mail around. So you had version 1 that you sent it to everybody. They give their feedback. You got 20 versions back. You consolidated it with things. Then you sent it out again, and then different people were accessing it, or the legal representative changed at the organization. All of a sudden, brought new points, and there it's a merry-go-round, and you'll never get done. And it explodes from being a 30-page text to 100 pages because everybody just keeps dumping stuff in. I mean, it's also a way to just basically grind down on I'd say nobody wants to read it anymore. We're just gonna sign it to get rid of it.
Did you ever make a second common meeting saying, look, now we enough with the back and forth after the meeting where we should have agreed. Now we will have a final.
No, we always managed everything on the meeting. We always managed. It's a 2-hour session every time. You think it's not that much, and a lot of it is general blah blah anyway. That's always the same. No, we've always managed to get it done on the first round of, if you have a meeting with everybody in the room. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have more or less the process in place. Is there anything else you want to add? Because I just want to dig into the IPR issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I think that's the main part. The process is just a bit of a tricky one.
So, let's have a look at the IPR.
All the fun. Yeah, there's basically, if nothing else is decided, everybody who contributed has a right to exploitation. That's sort of the if nothing else is agreed version, which is obviously really tricky. There's always the background information background patents.
Yeah,
which is basically stuff that you have pre-project. Yeah. Now, there it's also a bit tricky, because let's say you invent a new airplane, but it can only fly with a certain type of engine that's produced by one of the project partners. Mm-hmm. Now, basically, that project partner could take everybody out of the business by simply saying, "I'm not selling my engine to any of you guys."
Yeah.
So there's a sort of a ground rule saying everything that's created in the project that is dependent also on pre-existing patents, these pre-existing patents must be made available to the members of the consortium that want to exploit it at fair and reasonable conditions, whatever that is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But at least that's a step in the right direction. And I'm sure there's years of legal texts and files on what it means, fair and reasonable conditions. But that's definitely a step in the right direction. Then the other thing, obviously, is when you're preparing it, always think of who's interested in what when discussions come up. Because, for example, the industry partner, if let's say we have a project which is based on an analysis kit, right? And that analysis kit is provided by one medical company, and they have a patent on the process. So if somebody publishes something about the project, they think it's great because it means anybody who wants to do that will buy their kit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's something where you will have very little objection towards a lot of publications and research papers and whatever, and researchers going out. If the case is different, that a for-profit company has a process that it couldn't patent, but that's secret. Secrecy is one way of protecting your knowledge. Then that organization is going to be very, very, very careful of everything that gets published, and they're going to want to read everything 10 times. So what we have for these instances is just basically a clearing board. It's basically an email address or an email list, where every organization that thinks it has something that it might want to protect basically just puts in the people that that anything gets sent to pre-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody who's then the organizations have 2 weeks to scream veto or wait, I need to look at this exactly. And if they don't reply, then it's free to publish.
Okay.
So because the worst thing to do is having to wait for everybody to say yes, because half the emails don't get read, half the people are on vacation, so you can never do it like that. So that makes it easy for a researcher to say, look, I want to publish this paper, and then they submit basically the rough draft or the things, and then it very quickly becomes a bilateral process between the person doing the publishing and the industrial partner or the for-profit company that has the worry, and they talk to each other directly usually, and they say, look, you can say this, you can say this, don't say this, don't say that.
Is that something that's defined in the consortium agreement?
The process, the steps are defined in the consortium agreement, yes. So we have this general thing, there's stuff. So, every project that we run has some sort of SharePoint or something, yeah. And then we have approved publications in there. So if you want to do something, if you want to present something at a conference about the project or anywhere, or even give, like a small lecture at the university, I don't care what you want to do, anything that's in that folder is pre-approved, and you can use it. Yeah. So that makes it really easy to say, okay. Yeah. And then if you say, well, what I want to say isn't, it goes beyond what's on those documents. Then you send out, ideally, just the additional part, so that people don't have to look for it in a 300-page publication. There's a paragraph somewhere that's relevant. I mean, it's you want to work. It is a collaborative project, and you want to work with the people that you're working with. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they also already highlight. Look, I mean. And instead of just using the generic clearing board at project.com or .eu, then we have they'll say, look, Frank, I know this is tricky for you. Can you have a look at this? Is this okay? Right. In addition, and then it works really well. But the main thing, and that's already probably going into project management, is you continuously have to create awareness with usually the research crowd, but everybody, that just because you found it doesn't mean you can publish it.
Yeah. So it's it's very important. So that everything is written, so nobody can say that they didn't know.
Yeah.
How to deal with the process in the case of IPR or patents or licenses for research licenses, stuff like this. Everything needs to be pinned down, and everybody needs to that's why everybody signs, right? That you have seen it, you've signed it. So if anything happens, because things happen.
Yeah.
Things do happen. That's why you do this. And it's really important, both for researchers that they can publish things. It's research careers, even something research career changing, some of the stuff. For companies, it's vital. They went into this because it's extremely important for their business, for technology development, research development, innovation processes, whatever. That can make a big difference to how they will the trajectory of on the market and so on. So this is where the pain is. That's the real pain of the consortium agreement. The pain and the possibility, and this matter of it's basically it's respect put into legal terms. Respect for each other's position. Respect for the fact that each of you that comes into this, you have an interest. A hard interest. It's a soft interest in doing an international collaboration project, and there's the hard interest is the actual thing you get out of being there as an organization. And everybody, that's the baseline is that you need to respect each other's position, but you need to find a way through. So this is everything that Georg has just said here. It's that. It's the mirror of that you everybody wants the money, everybody wants to do a project, everybody wants to everybody has a stake, but at the end of the day, when it comes out of it, it is where everybody needs to be able to look him or herself in the mirror and say, I didn't cheat anybody. And if anybody and the ones that do not care, then they're put into a legal framework where they cannot, or they're severely punished if they do so.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you can't forget is, I mean, this consortium agreement is written 3 to 6 months before the project starts by the legal teams, right? And you know that people who start on the project, researchers, PhDs, postdocs, they're not going to read the grant agreement and the consortium agreement on the first day on the job. They're going to do their research, right? So one of the things that we do is it's a project handbook. It's basically 10 pages, the most important part of the GA and the consortium agreement. None of the legalese. We always say, if you think you're touching it, please go to the consortium agreement or the grant agreement to really clarify. But like a quick and dirty description of the rules of what you have to know is there, and 10 pages everybody will read. Yeah, you can request that.
It's more like each section is a flyer size, right? Every page, do's and don'ts, and this is what it is. That's what's in the agreement. If you want details, go to the actual document.
And the other thing is, at every 6-month meeting, always remind them of these things, that communication is necessary, but it's restricted because there's interests of companies. And there's, when in doubt, ask is a simple one, right?
Anything else important to say about the IPR issue? And did you ever? I experienced troubles.
Yeah.
But have you ever experienced actual battles coming throughout the project, where you had to take legal action, lawyers, stuff like this?
Lawyers were threatened, but it didn't come to that. It was a document that was it was a publication that was submitted and then it was retracted, but it never got to the point.
As a freshman, I would almost say, just my very first job within this sector. Hadn't had anything to do with EU R&D funding before, working in the NCP organization, Danish one, for the government. And I was thrown into coordinating the last 6 months of an FP6 project. And everything was well when I came in, but then a conflict arose around budget between us as coordinator and one of the partners. A miscalculation, typo from my manager meant that suddenly legal claims came in because they thought they had more money than they had. they asked about how much funding budget they had left, and they got a wrong figure, and then based on that, they started to spend more than they actually had in the contract. So the responsibility, of course, was their own to look to understand the contract and understand the figures, but because my manager as coordinator wrote a wrong figure, there came a legal battle. So I've been sitting with like this, like you have, like when you negotiate with lawyers on both sides. We had to take our lawyers from the ministry with us, and they came with lawyers down from Berlin. It ended
really
when they settled the
one.
case, but there we had to sit with the consortium agreement. I sat together with our lawyer, and we went through the consortium agreement, how that was structured in the consortium agreement, battles like that. Yeah, that's part of my experience. But interesting thing was the first thing I ever tried within working with this or something like this. No, so that can happen out there, but it's very rare.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when people ask me stuff, I always, to the best of my knowledge, your budget is this, but please go back to this and then, when they ask them, but the only thing that actually counts is what it says in the budget calculation. And
this my manager didn't write, right? Yeah. So heads up on all these kind of
that's why it's good to have a disclaimer at the bottom saying all emails are informative only and have no only if it's written by fax is it legally binding. Oh, you don't have a fax machine anymore? Tough luck.
No.
But I still get those emails that have something like that.
It's only Germany who get those. They still have the fax. Even Eastern European countries, Southern Europe, nobody uses the fax. The Germans use the fax. It's the only Germans you have the occasional fax number at the signature of the email. Sorry, Germans, but that's the truth.
No, because in Germany, a fax document is a legal document. It's the only electronic document that is considered legally binding. As far as I know.
You need to get Germany. You need to get on that digital train. The rest of us is already way ahead of you. No. Georg, I put here in the rundown zoom out connection with the overall process, but we have been referring. You've been referring constantly to this in relation to developing the grant agreement, and it goes parallel. Is there anything you need to say around this?
No, just like I said. I mean, the minute you get your invitation to contract negotiations, that's when you start with the consortium agreement. There's no such thing as starting too early, and identifying the people that you have to talk with. This is not something that you discuss with your scientists. They're not competent. They don't care. It's not their world. Yeah, not usually. Yeah, you have to get the legal departments in, and there's nothing worse than having it all set up, having all your PIs say, "Yeah, awesome, this is exactly what I want to do it," and then legal comes in and says, "Oh my God, what did you guys do?" Because then you start at zero. Because then you're back to zero, right? So this is something, but it is something where you can use your scientists and researchers to calm legal. If the researchers say, "Look, I've worked with these guys for 15 years. Yeah, we've done 20 projects worth millions together. There's never been an issue. Yeah, if he wants this clause in there that says, they can take away up to 50% of our money if we underperform. We have never underperformed. This is not going to be the first project we do it. Please leave it in there. Please just let's go on. Yeah. Because it's an identical document that gets signed by every partner. Yeah, there's no like, I want this, I want that. Everybody has the exact same version. Yeah, there's no bilateral specialties, right? And one thing that you can do, for example, in the clinical trial project that we're doing, we have to do 400 or something clinical trials, right? Now, of course, you make a plan. Yeah, the big centers do 20 or 30, the small centers do 10 or whatever, but nobody's going to hit their number exactly. So you can already define in the consortium agreement saying everybody has, so and so much money per trial participant that they manage to do, or per test that they want to do. If one overperforms and the other underperforms, a fixed amount of X is going to be transferred. So you don't have any arguments, right?
Yeah.
You have to build 5 houses. Every partner builds 1 house. Great. You all get $1 million. Well, what if one doesn't build a house and another builds 2? What are we going to do? How much money goes from one to the other? And then you have to say, well, the first partner, we can't take away everything from that partner and have them with 0 and the other 2 million. But we'll say it's 900,000 per house and 100,000, for the project management, whatever, blah, blah, in the background. So if somebody doesn't build the house and then somebody else builds it, it's 900,000 euros that moves. And stuff like that, when you have that defined, it makes it a lot easier, especially because once the project gets going, it's not necessarily the same person or same investigator that you'll be working with for the duration of the project.
Yeah.
So any of these, numbers that you can think of that make sense, that you can add in there early, even if it's just if we can't agree, then this is the number. If you can agree to something else, you can always change it, right? But it's like in the prenup. If we can't agree on anything else, then I get the dog, you get the house.
Yeah. Georg, how often do you have amendments to the consortium agreement? Does that happen?
Almost never, because I avoid it like the plague. If something's necessary, and if it's in any way, I mean, the obvious amendment is a new partner joining, but there the amendment is they take it as it is. You have no voice. It's take it or leave it. There's no more discussion. So that's technically not really an amendment. But if something needs to be changed, it very, very rarely really is relevant for everybody, right? So it's easier to make an addition to the CA to clarify a situation between 2 or 3 partners, right? And they can agree because the consortium agreement is the basis. That's the rock bottom. We can't agree. We're just shouting at each other, and we're no longer having a normal
the conflict
discourse.
ladder. You're quite far up there.
Yeah, and so what you can always do is say, well, we decide that although we decided it's whatever 900,000 if I build your house, since that we can agree that in this case it's only going to be 850 between partner A and partner B, right? Yeah. And I wouldn't make an amendment to the consortium agreement that everybody has to agree to, because in that you could just say, well, that's just between partner A and partner B. And if they have a side letter on agreement that's known to the coordinator, then that's fine.
Because again, what everybody cares about in relation to that consortium agreement, that's related to the IPR.
Yeah.
That's where the pain is, because everything around decision structures, information, communication between the group, whatever, and all these things people don't care about. But they do. What they do care about, that's the IPR, and that has been roughly gone through with lawyers. So that's you don't want to open up that box.
No, and there's 2 things. As soon as you open it up, somebody's gonna say, "Oh, great! I also want to change point 9.8. Yeah. I got another idea. And then you go crazy. And especially with IPR stuff, it's usually not the entire consortium. It's partner A and B agree on something, and then they just agree on it in a minute. Make it public, tell everyone about it, be transparent, yes, but don't open up this can of worms. It's really, everybody's just happy to have it signed and never touch it again.
On that note, let's move into the learnings, do's and don'ts. A few do's and don'ts.
Do start early. Do make sure that everybody contributes, and do be careful that some people have constraints that may not seem logical to you, but it's simply based on where they are. some organizations say, yeah, we can't do that for, national legal reasons. There's nothing to debate there. You have to simply accept that. Was that the do's or the don'ts?
That was the do's.
That was the do's.
And don'ts.
Don't expect this to be quick. Don't diverge too much from the standard DESCA. The DESCA is a really good guide. Don't be a dick. Don't be unfair.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
So that's what we talked about in the grant agreement, right?
Yeah.
Be fair, be transparent, be honest.
Yeah, it's and the more open and transparent you are, and the more you say, look, I mean, that's also, I had a problem with my legal department getting this through, but I think it makes sense, and I think it's better for the project. And if you start thinking like that, people really come on board. And the thing is, my experience has always been that legal departments don't change that much. They're in these organizations for a long time, so they've seen a lot, and they will remember you. And they will remember that during the consortium agreement, you were an agreeable and fair person to work with that was output orientated and not process orientated. And when you have a problem and you call them up and say, look, Fred, I really hate to do this, but we have this problem. We need to find an issue. And if they, if you were reasonable back then, and it's the same person, then there's a high likelihood they'll say, okay, look, let's figure something out that works for everybody. It's not going to be perfect for everybody, but, so that everybody gets out with as little damage as possible. And that helps a lot.
Yeah. Nah, that's, this is a not too long. It's nice. We're almost.
Lawyers are also people, I guess, is something, you have to remember. They're also people. They're people, they're, like researchers are different, lawyers are also different. But if you start to think of what, if I was a lawyer, what would I do? I think that puts you in a good mindset to understand where they're coming from. And a lot can be done in one-on-one talks where you just openly discuss things and say, look, off the record, this is a discussion we can have right now. And then, and that's why it's important to have these one-on-ones before you have that joint meeting. Because in a joint meeting, when you don't know anybody and it's your first time exposed to a lot of people, you don't know how are they, they don't know who you are, you don't know who they are. But if you've talked to all of them individually, then you can say, hey, yeah, Frank, I remember you saying that in our call last week. You're right. I was going to do that. But then I talked to Greg and Greg said this and that. And then it's a completely different conversation than three people arguing their points who've never talked to each other before.
Yeah, and I guess also by bilateral talks you get points of view sometimes that enlighten you a little bit on the way they perceive things. Important points of views in relation to future possible problems that you need to be aware of in relation to the common work in the group. Yeah. So. Of course, it's a bone breaker to talk to so many lawyers, but it's if you kind, fair, transparent, and collaborative, then everybody's going to be happy in the end.
And it's a joint process. You all of you want to be in this game.
Exactly. Now you won the money.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of you have the money in your hand, so it's a precondition to move on. So that's a motivator.
Yeah.
The grand. No, toughest challenge. What's the toughest challenge in relation to developing all this part of the?
The toughest challenge is getting 17 legal opinions into one document, and the only way to do it is with a joint call where everybody's on, where you can. Or sometimes even, I've had situations where, one team was like, no, we can't do this. I got to ask my boss, And then the other lawyer is really jumping in. It's like, look, I understand where you're coming from. I know that this is the national law because I'm also from Sweden or whatever, blah, blah. But we've done it. We say, yes, we have contracts that say this. It's perfectly okay. You'll get it done. And once you've got that momentum, you've won, right? Because then you know that everybody knows that this is that this is a joint process that we want to get done together to everybody's benefit. Yeah,
you could see the drop of sweat rolling down the forehead. It's like a spaghetti western, and your Morricone film, they stand on the train station.
Yeah. Who's the good, who's the bad, and who's the ugly? Yeah.
No. Well done. Thanks for taking us all through this. Very nice. I'm just gonna wrap this up, and before we say goodbye, as always. Now, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to the end. I hope that this is instructive and informative for you guys. That's the whole point. To give you an idea of what this is, so you can sort of prepare yourself, and also for you guys that has done this a lot, that you maybe get reflections on the process that can help you a little bit of optimizing this complex way of, because it cannot be anything but complex, but maybe give you some ideas of how to handle it in the future. To everybody, check out my, if you like what you're hearing here, there's much, much more in relation to this on my website, thegrand.eu. You can also just scroll through your Spotify, the Grand Spotify account. There you'll find everything collected, more than 100 episodes. But if you go to my website, there it is categorized. So you can go in and find, if you have a specific interest in Horizon Europe, I've gathered things there. Go to check out my proposal preparation series called the Timeline series, which is the older sister of this series, where you find the steps broken down. So yeah, it's just, you'll find a lot in there. So go in, browse around, and find the stuff you need. And while you're in there, if you have any sympathy with what I'm doing, subscribe to my email list. That's important for independent podcasters like myself. So thanks in advance for that. And finally, connect with me on LinkedIn and follow my page. I made the Grant page, so follow that. I've tried to channel my stuff into that, because my LinkedIn page is a weird combination of my daytime work, working with local municipal association, attracting labor to the stuff like this, and then my grant and EU funding flow stream. So I am trying to channel things into that page there. So yeah, that's that. Georg, thank you so much for coming around. And we will, because I don't know if you remember, but in the Consortium agreement episode, we talked about actually kickoff meeting, and that you have a nice way of doing kickoff meetings. So sort of committed yourself to also doing that episode with me, but we will connect with that post recording relating to that.
Yeah, no, I'll probably bring a colleague of mine who's an expert. She has made my kickoff meetings a lot better, so I'd like to bring her on the call as well.
It's a cliffhanger for you there. That has not been recorded. When you have been recorded when you listen to this. We'll see. It's all the time space issue here. When you record and when it's recorded, when you guys listen to this. Now, Georg, thank you for coming around. It's been a pleasure as always. Let's say goodbye to dear listeners. Bye.
Thank you, Niels. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You will find the link in the episode notes where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Georg's personal LinkedIn site, as well as the link to his own website of the company. Further, there's a direct link to the Desca Model website, where you find the semi-official Consortium agreement template. In next week's episode, I have the consultancy company Scientify in the studio that is focusing on supporting research organizations towards funding. The founders, Judy Milke and Kate Gardner, share with me a business concept that they have developed to suit exactly the research world, and how they managed to build up the company. You can indeed look forward to that. Finally, some of you might have noticed that I have launched a collaboration with Grant's consultancy Inspire Science about a month ago. Together, the great team of Inspire Science and the Grant developed Inspire Science's own series of 3 episodes flagging their capacities within different areas of supporting research organizations towards EU funding. You will find the full series under the label The Grant Collaboration, where you listen to your podcasts. If you're curious and think that this could also be something for you, then go and check out the possibilities on my website, thegrant.eu, under the menu Collaboration. If you have a specific message within EU R&D funding that you want to share and think that podcast and sound would be an appealing tool in your communication strategy, please reach out to me for conversation on how I can help you to make that happen. The grant is also open to join EU proposals as a partner or subcontractor. Adding sound to the proposal communication strategy can be a strong addition to connecting with the project stakeholders and the world beyond the realm of the project. Reach out through LinkedIn or my website if interested. See you next week.